G'day everybody, welcome back to the podcast, a very special edition of the podcast. My name is Matt Walsh, I'm joined by Jake Michaels as always, and we have a very, very special guest joining us. If Brownlow is Jake's footy Christmas, then this man is putting up the tree and the decorations about the draft. He's ESPN's draft expert, Jasper Chellappah. Good to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Walshy. Good to see you and Jake as well.
Nice to have you in. We like to do this at least once a year and talk all things draft, of course, coming up next Wednesday, depending on when you are listening to this. You've been very busy for us, you've been very busy for Triple M. You've got fingers in many pies. Good to see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel now with draft approaching.
Yeah, it's the busiest time of year for me, and it's really exciting as well because we get to see 55, 60 kids live out their childhood dreams. And that, to me, is why draft is my Christmas day. It's the coolest time when all 18 clubs supporters get together and actually support something.
And get to unwrap their presents.
Draft day or grand final day?
Oh, grand final day only goes for 3 hours. Draft day usually goes for 4.5.
There is plenty of content to come. We're going to talk all things draft today. As I said, we've got one more power rankings out on the website. Depending on when you're listening to this, it might be out already. We've got one more phantom draft coming. We've got analysis on the day. We'll have a live blog on the night. There's just so much that is going to be coming from the draft. Firstly, I guess we might start with just something a bit more broader, Jasper, and that's talking about the draft in general. I think when we looked at the start of the year, or after last year in particular, there were maybe concerns about the depth and breadth of talent in this year's draft. And is that a theme that has persisted throughout the season, or are we starting to, now that they're sort of maturing and getting more exposure in the junior ranks, are we seeing more talent and depth emerge?
2025's crop has been a lot different to 2024 when there was just this incredible talent that made clubs want to trade into the first round frame. We saw North Melbourne move their future first round pick for a really late pick on night one, pick 27 I think it was in the end, because they rated someone in the top 10 who was still available. That's how deep that draft went. This year, I think you're going to have a bit more consensus on those top guys because there's less of them. The depth hasn't quite emerged as recruiters were really hoping. And I think when you speak to the draftees as well, the quality of talent from this year compared to last year when they were playing as bottom ages, I think there was a bit of a difference, especially when you look around the grounds. The South Australian crop was incredible this year. One of the best we'll ever see. 2018, I think it rivals when it was Rosie and Rankin and Lukosius, that crop coming through. But you compare it to Victoria right now and WA and Tasmania as well, the talent just hasn't been there this year.
I guess the question I have is how early can you know or get a sense of how good a draft crop is going to be?
Well, recruiters are watching these kids up through, under 14s. They do championships and stuff these days, especially the under 16s now at Carnival, up on the Gold Coast every year. You get a really good indication of the quality of football. And I think after doing it for years and years, you go to understand the quality of football that you're watching year on year and if it's improving or if it's getting worse. And this year, I think there was little doubt that the depth of the talent just wasn't quite there at the very top. But there's also been bolters and sliders that, we've spoken about throughout the year. Sullivan Roby being number one on that. So there's always going to be players emerge and there's always going to be guys who in the 40s look like absolute stars from day dot in the AFL.
So does that mean that there will be fewer picks taken this year? I mean, you've had a look at the slots available that each club has. I mean, sometimes we see up to sort of 70, 80.
You're telling me that pick 127 won't actually be taken?
Will pick 127 be taken?
Well, we saw, I think there was 72 last year. Logan Smith from the GWS Giants Academy was the last pick.
And 72 was quite a lot, right?
Yeah, that was absolutely huge. Especially post-COVID when we reduced list numbers. There were more players being retained through rookie list up elevations and that kind of stuff. This year, max of 57 picks, so that would be a record low. Obviously, that reflects the depth of the talent this year, and clubs wanting to hold on to their own lists.
Well, I've noticed that a lot is that clubs are sort of delisting with the intention to re-rookie a lot of these sort of older players that they might want to have on a rookie deal instead of a main list spot.
Exactly right.
Can you explain that in the simplest terms? Like why are clubs doing that? And is it a sort of a loophole?
Bird in the hand?
The rookie list is the most redundant name for a list because it's not rookies anymore. No. Most of it's veterans, actually.
300 gamers.
It should be the veteran list. But the rookie list is another way to supplement your list. You need to take 3 picks. So delisting someone with the intention of re-rookieing them means that you're able to take a selection that otherwise you'd be taking on a kid, but they don't want to take them on the kids because of the depth of the talent, and instead they delist someone to pick them up and use one of those 3 list spots.
So it is kind of a loophole
yeah, absolutely.
So is it something that needs to be addressed? Because I don't think that's why clearly this wasn't why this was introduced in the first place.
I'd prefer to have, maybe. I'd prefer to have a designated kind of veterans, 2 spots on the list that are for, maybe a veterans minimum or something like that, but extend the career of some of the greats of the game so they can play while still, maybe they only play VFL football, but they can still do a coaching role and stuff like that while remaining on the list and being able to play football.
Yeah.
Every year there seems to be more academy players popping up, father-sons coming out of every cupboard that you might sort of open, and the compromisation of the draft has been a real big topic over the last few years, especially with the top-end talent. Look at names like Nick Dacos, Will Ashcroft, these kind of guys. What does it look like this year? How compromised is this draft?
That was probably the other issue. You talk about the depths of the draft. Let's look at how compromised it is, because 33% of my Phantom draft was club-tied mids.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's, 9 of the 27 selections that I have going in the first round are already club-tied, and that's from the Northern Academies that continue to produce incredible talent, which is fantastic to see from a holistic football standpoint. To make that a breeding ground for really quality juniors is a credit to Gold Coast and Brisbane so far. And then the father-sons as well. We've seen Harry Dean emerge from a fringe top 20 prospect to now West Coast is having a look at him at picks 1 and 2. Which is a godsend for Carlton to have the best key defender in the draft walk into your club. It's fantastic, and I love how good the romanticism of the father-son rule is. But it does mean that we've got a heavily compromised draft this year, and there are going to be big changes next year.
And these are clubs that are already successful. I mean, the Suns have got a couple of top 10 academy picks linked to them. The Lions have a top 10 academy pick linked to them. And these are, like you say, these are successful clubs. So very interesting to sort of see how that kind of works. Here's how today's going to work. We're going to go club by club. We're going to look at their draft hands, how they went last year, Jake, their list profile, their list needs, and then we'll ask you, Jasper, maybe sort of players in that draft pool that might sort of fit those list needs. We might as well kick it off with the Crow. Oh, actually, before we do, if you are listening to this on as a podcast or you're watching it on YouTube, we'll add chapters, so you can skip ahead if you really want to and get the lowdown on your team. But we highly recommend listening to the whole pod. You'll get it.
You can skip ahead, but don't skip ahead.
But we will talk sort of more names and more prospects, and you'll get to know a lot of these guys a lot better if you listen all the way through. Let's start with the Crows. Jake, they had a pretty successful season last year, but ultimately when the whips started cracking, they fell short.
Yeah, they did. Minor premiers, obviously, but lost both of their finals. 18-5. Look, they did so much right, the Crows, throughout the year. I don't think we can look at it as a failed season. I think the last 2 games, disappointing. Pick 16. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that next week. I think quite clearly, my eyes told me that they lacked a little bit of depth through the midfield in finals. That's probably where they came up a bit short. But will there be a temptation to go with maybe another key forward, maybe a Taylor Walker replacement type?
Well, missing Isaac Rankin through the finals really hurt their midfield depth, and they drafted at pick 4 last year, Sid Draper, who was number 2 on my board. He didn't get a look in, or much of a look in, last year, but I expect him to really contend for that starting midfield place. I don't think they really replaced Matt Crouch out of that, who's now retired, and obviously Matt Crouch has his detractions as well as a footballer, but his ability to win the ball and feed outside runners was really important for them. So they missed that a little bit. I know what you're talking about with the midfield depth. I think their running power around the stoppage is more important. I think they haven't been able to cement those wingmen. I know Cumming came in and gave them something off a wing, but if they could add a bit more wing depth, and then obviously the elephant in the room right now is Taylor Walker's form through the finals was really concerning. Yeah. They've given him an extra year. He's decided he wants to play on. I think they should be looking there, because I'm not 100% confident of the health of those 3 going forward is going to be enough, because there's nothing underneath it right now.
So if they were to go down that path of looking for another key forward, who's likely to be available at pick 16?
Well, this is the best SA crop to come through since 2018. I've called it, and they might have 2 great options there. So firstly, let's talk about Mitch Marsh, who is not the Bison. He's not the Australian ODI captain. He is a half forward, about 193 centimetres out of South Australia. I know, yeah. He's an incredible runner up and down the ground. His ability to take contested marks means that he can play above his size, but he's also really good around the ground level. So a little bit of what Patrick Voss did this year for Fremantle in terms of his ability to follow up at ground level, be a bit of a batting ram through the forward 50. I see a little bit of that. Darcy Fogarty as well in terms of the size of the player, and he kicks really accurately for goal. I think Mitch Marsh should be right in their frame. The other one is Aidan Schubert, who I think is he looms as a potential Riley Thilthorpe clone. Okay. His ability around the ground, he was top 10 in the draft combine for the 2-kilometre run at 200 centimetres. His follow-up work in the ruck, he's got really soft hands and is incredible around the ground to be able to work as a ruckman up and down. He's got the best contested mark, I think, ahead of the ball in the crop. So I think that he will probably go a bit earlier than this pick 16, which is why I think Adelaide might be a contender in the end to trade their future first, move up the board, or to add another piece because of the strength of this SA crop, the want to add some more depth through the midfield and up forward. So I think there's out of all the clubs, I'd say they're number one or number two in what I believe would be a team willing to trade a future first-round pick for this.
And we've seen the Crows have had that sort of penchant for going after local talent. So you've got Schubert sort of ranked around that sort of top 15. You've also got Sam Cumming in there. There's who else is in there from SA? Dyson Sharp. I mean, he's going to go too early for them.
Yeah.
But you think they might decide to dip into next year's draft hand and then try and move up
I
to
think
find one of these SA guys?
Yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity. There's going to be clubs willing to trade out of this. Hawthorn is a candidate. Carlton have those 2 picks they need to work out. We'll get to them. But if the Crows can leverage a future first-round pick for a pick in the top 18 of this crop, they can get 2 good
talent.
SA players. Javon Philippou is another one who's the brother of Mateus, and he thinks that he should go number 1 in this crop. They've got real high self-esteem, those Philippou boys. And he would add some incredible running power to that midfield as well. So they've got options.
So further down, they've also got a club-tied player in Mitch Stevens. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, so Mitch, he had an up-and-down season. He played for the Gippsland Power with Willem Dersma, and he, off half-back, he's a good runner, a really good distributor. I think that's an area of need for Adelaide as well. Wayne Miller played a really good role this year, but he hasn't been the perfect bill of health throughout his career so far, and it added a little bit of depth. I expect him to be nominated and to land on their rookie list in the end. I don't think he'll get a national draft bid.
And then, look, we can move on, but they've got a few later picks as well, so sort of like that 48, 55, 64. By the time all these bids are matched and father-sons come in, it might be a bit later. Where will they be looking at? Their names that sort of pop up, maybe some of those South Australians that are sort of further down the order?
Yeah, so one I want to mention for them is Harley Barker, who looms as the ideal prototype wingman at the next level, but unfortunately he's done his ACL, so he wouldn't be someone to come into the lineup next year. He did it quite late in the season. I expect that to be a full 18-month kind of rebuild for him and to attack 2027. So for a club in the premiership window, can you afford to take that and take that on as a project player, knowing that he can become the perfect 185 kind of centimetre wingman who marks and kicks and runs all day? I think that's something that Adelaide should be looking for a little bit later on.
Brisbane, 2-time premiers Jake. If there's one thing that they would love to be adding to their list ahead of next year, it's a potential top 5 draftee. And it looks like they have a club-tied player that could go as high as that if they really wanted. So Dan Annable is that round 1 club-tied player, as you say, through that Next Generation Academy. They've got picks 17, 23, 44, 51, so on, so on. What do you sort of see that what they would need beyond, I guess, Annable time, early pick?
To be honest, not much. The rich get richer. They're going to get him. They're going to get, as you say, I think you have him ranked 3rd overall in terms of talent of this crop. Don't forget, they've already added Oscar Allen and Sam Draper through free agency. So, I mean, add those 2 players in. Do they have many holes to plug? Not really.
What I will say is they've done such a good job of bringing in these midfielders who have played midfield their entire junior careers and moulding them into something else. Jasper Fletcher was a midfielder coming into this. He started on a wing, now he's at half-back and he looks like he's going to be an incredible half-back for a long, long time. Sam Marshall, he played in the grand final after coming in as a midfielder outside of the midfield. Levi Ashcroft came in and was a wingman. He never played that role before. So their ability to turn those genuine midfielders into complementary pieces in their best 22 has been a huge credit to the coaching staff and development program. So I expect Dan Annable to be able to play a lot of football early on, just not through the midfield when they're fully fit.
So where do you think he would play?
Well, we've only seen him as a midfielder. He's got incredible leadership capabilities. I think he could easily play off half-back or a half-forward where his ball winning is going to still be important. He's quite a balanced player in terms of running both ways, helping out, being unselfish. I think his talent, his ability to see the game and read the play is going to be really important for this team.
And assuming fitness and everything and health, is he someone who's going to be a likely weekly contributor for this Lions team, or is it going to be a bit more on the cusp?
Absolutely. He might be the most consistent player to come through in this crop, and that's a huge testament because there have been some fantastic names to come through in this pool. But what he's able to do as a leader, he captained the AFL Academy side, which is the best 20-odd kids coming through the pathways, and he you say it, about a few kids, but he's as likely as any to captain an AFL side. So
where will the bid come for him? I mean, we've seen that clubs have sort of been reticent to take a punt on these linked guys too
I
early.
never understand why.
Will the bid come in that sort of 2, 3, 4 range?
It should. I think it's less likely. I think Richmond would be looking at bidding on the 2 Gold Coast boys that we'll get to.
Okay.
West Coast has been linked to Carlton's Harry Dean, obviously, which we'll get to. But I think it's more likely to come a little bit further down towards that Essendon range in the second half of the top 10, and which would be a bit of a steal for Brisbane, obviously.
Another steal.
Which it just, I don't understand the rationale behind it from 17 other clubs. Why not make them pay?
For one of the better leaders and more immediate
not?
contributors that you might have. I mean,
Yeah.
the Lions also have a couple of other linked players. Are they the names that they will be going after later in the draft, or do you think they'll look elsewhere?
Much later, if they do figure into it. But we spoke a little bit about their later prospects last year, and Ty Gallup came out of nowhere to rip apart a prelim final. So who knows? Ty and Prindable is who you're talking about. Harrison Bridge as well. They're more rookie options. I think maybe one of them gets taken a little bit later on to fill out their need to take those 3 draft picks.
Sure.
Because they've only got Dan Annable in that first round frame.
Yep.
But I probably expect one of those guys to go in the national draft and one of them to go in the rookie draft.
Cool. The Blues, we mentioned them before because Harry Dean, as you said, sort of come from the clouds to be and maybe a prospect outside the top 20, top 30 to suddenly being the premier big defender of this draft. And he could go as high as you say, West Coast picks at pick 1 and pick 2. So the Blues have obviously got all their eggs in the Dean basket, but they've also got another club-tied player called Jack Ison. You can tell us a bit about him, but they've got picks 9, 11, 43, 54, 67, 62, and you think they'll probably have to use most of those to get those guys through the door.
Yeah, absolutely they will, and they've got something on the horizon that's really exciting too in Cody Walker. So they're in a really strong position in terms of what they can bring through the draft. They lost Jagger Smith the year, but he was number 1 on my board this time last year. So if you go, Jagger Smith, Harry Dean, Jack Ison, Cody Walker over the next 3 years, that is an incredible way to rebuild and regenerate your list. So
Carlton could have 9 or 10 new players playing round 1 next year, compared to what they had at the end of this year. When you consider the 3 or 4 players that missed the bulk of the year through injury, the players they've already brought in and what they're able to get at the draft, it's going to be a very new look Carlton side come round 1 or opening round next year. And I think it's a good thing. I think on the surface,
exciting, isn't it?
On the surface, you look at the top end talent they lost and think, geez, that's tough. But look at the players that have come back through the door. All of a sudden, there's no longer that, and we've spoken about it. The reliance on the top end players.
Yeah.
It's all well and good when they're all firing, but it's not a sustainable way to.
The ceiling
win.
might have dropped, but the floor might have risen.
I think the floor's undoubtedly. I think it's undoubtedly rising, and I don't necessarily think the ceiling has dropped that far. I think they can still be.
Whack on Charlie Curnow.
And it's not that it's a whack on him, but I think what they've got back, I think Carlton's done pretty well considering the players that have walked out the door over the last 6 weeks.
Get Baggers fans excited. Tell us a bit more about Harry Dean, where he's come from, and then Jack Ison and what they can bring to the Blues.
Yeah, Murray Bushrangers is where he's out of, and he's the best reader of the play that you could see in the Coates Talent League right now. His ability to peel off his man and intercept is why he's going to go in the top 5 or 10, and I think that. That in the modern game is just so important. The intercept marks, the kick-starting transition, his lovely left foot kick as well. I would like to see him get a bit more involved, up the ground and make his opponent work as well, because he is quite defense oriented and wants to lock down his opponent, doesn't want to give them a kick, which is obviously fantastic.
Yeah.
But if he can become a bit more of a distributor, because you've already got Jacob Wiedering who doesn't love the footy in his hands, then they're gonna be a really good 1-2 punch for the next 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, it's honestly, I mean, I don't know how you feel as a fellow Carlton supporter, but if you'd ask me what is the biggest deficiency, I mean, there are a few. I think it's clearly a Wiedering partner, a defensive partner, and I think. You take any father son when you can get him, but sometimes
One that fits them all.
Sometimes it just fit. You could not have asked for a more perfect player.
He's exactly what you need in this draft, and the fact that it's club tied is it's a godsend.
Jack Ison, quick word on him.
Yeah, so I think late first is his range. Really powerful midfielder who's kind of emerged late in the piece for Oakley. He was in that kind of top 50 range for me throughout the year. But as an NGA, has really developed late, and clubs love that late development. I think it bodes really well for when they get into that professional environment. So he's bolted a little bit into that top 20, 25 frame, and I expect Carlton will need to match a bit on night 1 for him.
That's interesting. And then there is another club-linked player. Will Tyson Gresham get a look in?
Yeah, Tyson Gresham, I think, trailed away a little bit in where recruiters are seeing him. I think he might go back to the Coates League next year as an overager and try and earn his way through there. Obviously, the brother of Jade. and he is club tied to Carlton as a small forward, but I think that he might go an extra year either in the Coach League or the VFL. But just one final thing. Picks 9 and 11. You're in a situation where a Harry Dean bid probably comes before those selections. Maybe Richmond, maybe Essendon. West Coast has postured that.
Adelaide might come knocking.
Adelaide would be definitely interested. I think Essendon's got picks 6, 21 and 27 to offer up as well, which would mean you get ahead of a Harry Dean bid and you also are able to match a bid on him. That means that if you've got a pick in the top 10, Carlton supporters should be laughing right now. They're in a great position and hopefully you've got two really good prospects coming in the door in Harry Dean and Jack Ison to add to an actual draft mix too.
Awesome, great news for the Blues. The Pies, the list age is the oldest in the competition, and they don't have a first-round draft pick as well. So they are, once again, for the second year in a row, kind of going to be looking at those sort of later picks. Yep. Where do you see the Pies needing to?
I'm a bit worried about the Pies. I think, I think the list is going to fall off a cliff in the next year or two. I think that's pretty clear when you look at the players that they're not going to be there in a couple of years' time. The forward line is really concerning for me. No, Brody Myercheck an All-Australian caliber player? No, he wasn't, but he was one of the most consistent forwards in the league.
Super important.
And incredibly important for their structure. He's gone now. Where are the goals coming from? Where is Collingwood generating a score from? I don't know. I think that's an area they have to look at, and it looks like they're going to be able to plug that hole at least somewhat with Zach McCarthy.
Well, yeah, it's really important for them that they bring in a good tall this draft period, and Zach McCarthy looms as a really exciting tall prospect to develop. He's played mostly in the ruck this year at 199 centimetres, but he's got this spring athleticism, he's got good hands in the air, and he loves to kind of take the game on as well, so he's got that really burst off the mark, which I think recruiters are excited about, which could see him taken on night one, and Collingwood are in a good position to match a bid if it comes in the 20s still.
And will he be able to contribute right away? I mean, we've sort of seen that these 198, 99, 200 centimetre guys can swim pretty quickly when they're tossed in, and then others take a bit more time. Where does he live?
I'm much more hesitant on McCarthy, unfortunately, for Pies fans. He's very thin, and I think I don't think he's embracing the physicality of league football quite as well as he needs to make it.
Longer term, is he, because he's played ruck, but I think you've written that he can play as a forward or as a defender.
I would love to see him as a defender. I think his athleticism, closing speed, I think he's got real hallmarks of what a good defender would look like.
So he probably doesn't address the issue that I spoke about before in terms of their forward line. Lack of forward line.
Maybe not. What I would suggest is he's got that kind of makeup of a Darcy Moore where he started up forward, and he may play up forward for the first 3 seasons of his career.
Sure.
But I think down back is where his best football will come.
Where else can the Pies look on draft night? Maybe not night one, but maybe night two.
Yeah, so Jai Saxton is an interesting prospect that emerged through their NGA. He kicked 5 goals in a game. At one point, he's a really skinny half forward, I want to call him, out of the Oakley Chargers as well. And he's been able to kick bags of goals just through his intelligence, his agility, his quick thought process. His hand to foot is really, really good. So he's got great IQ to play the game. I worry a little bit about his athletic profile, and if you can make it as a half forward, you have to just be able to cover so much distance and do it really quickly and be quite powerful as well in modern football. So he's an option for them to take. They haven't committed to him. They didn't commit to Tom McGuan. That was well publicised that they told the father-son prospect that they wouldn't be taking him in the national draft. It's still an option to land on their rookie list as well, or to train on with the club too, but they gave him that warning really, quite far out so he could do club interviews, and he had the opportunity, the best opportunity to get drafted, which I think was really good by the Pies.
Fair enough. So from the competition's oldest list to one of the youngest lists, the Bombers, after a strong draft last year, have another strong hand, obviously 5, 6, as you said before, 21, 27 and 30. So they'll be looking to make a splash this year, and there are probably a few areas of need, Jake.
Oh, there are, and I'm sure you will agree as a Bombers man. 2 top 6 picks, as you said, you can't botch these. I mean, Essendon's drafting of late hasn't been great. The question is, what do they need? Because unlike some of the other teams we've spoken about, there are several holes on this list. But I think you've got to go to the middle of the ground. I think they need a bit of explosiveness. They need a bit of power. They need match-winning types through the middle of the ground. I think that's probably where I would be looking. I'm interested to know what you would do.
Yeah,
if you
no,
had
I
those
really like
selections.
that call. They've had multiple top 10 picks, 2 times in the last decade. They took Darcy Parish and then Aaron Francis in 2015, and then they had those 3 picks with Archie Perkins, Nick Cox. So they're in and Zach Reed. So they're in a situation right now where they need to nail these picks because there's, they've just delisted Ben Hobbs, who was, pick 13 a few years ago. Elijah Sardis hasn't been able to make his way into this team either. They definitely need best available talent, but the power and the explosiveness that you're talking about, they're missing it as well. Like Jake Stringer at his best kind of added that for them, but they need to look to the next decade of their list right now and say, what exactly do we need? And there are a couple really good options there as well, but I think you've nailed it with what they want to do in the midfield.
Yeah, and especially with everything that happened surrounding Zach Merritt, like, is it a coin flip as to whether he's there this time next year? We don't know. So either way, he's going to be another year older. So yeah, I think having to get midfield talent in. So who are the players you're probably looking at to check that box?
Well, the first one I think supporters would want us to look at is Sullivan Roby, who is the bolter, and he's still we'll get to West Coast later on, but he hasn't been ruled out of their pick 2 discussions either. That's how high he could end up. This is a kid who he didn't play any VFL football. He wasn't in the AFL Academy. He didn't play at the national championships. He wasn't selected. He wasn't even on a coach talent list coming into the system.
I can tell
That's
you,
unreal.
you've got a piece on him for ESPN, so feel free to Google his name and ESPN and it'll pop up. We couldn't find a photo of him in Getty Images when you sent through that yarn. So that's kind of the situation of where he was at that time because the snappers weren't even looking at him.
He was playing in Rowville under-19s out in Sticks, and he just
Shout out to everyone in Rowville.
He impressed. He got the opportunity to play with the Eastern Rangers. He became their best player, and they won the flag.
Is there a comp for that? Have we seen a player make this sort of...
So Clayton Oliver came out of the Murray Bushrangers, probably not to that extent, but his rise, to a top 5 pick, and it worked. Bailey Humphrey out of the Gippsland Power, he rose up to be a top 5 pick for... Melbourne was trying to trade up to land him in the top 3 in the end, and he's obviously worked out for the Gold Coast Suns as well. So these late risers, they have a really good track record.
I feel like the late stark rise is far better than the gradual. We're just cooling a little bit on this player because it's like
James Warple was a bit of a cooler, and he has sort of forged a pretty decent career.
a pretty decent career.
So you're hoping you don't draft your James Warple, you're hoping you draft your Christian Petrarca, but that would be my comp. So Christian Petrarca, in terms of the way he plays, his power, his explosiveness at ground level, he doesn't do a lot in the air. He's 194 centimetres. He doesn't do a lot in the air, but he's so powerful at ground level, and he used to be 180 centimetres, and that's kind of where he got it from. His ground level skills are fantastic.
So LA Bombers fans' fears, they do have a couple of club-tied players, including one guy who could go in the first round. That'll be after these picks 5 and 6.
Yeah. So no guarantees here from the Dons on where or when they'll be taking these guys, but Adam Swade is probably the one that'll be bid on in that first round to early second round mix. I've got him going in the first round in my Phantom draft. I just wonder if clubs are a little bit deterred by his ability to play outside of the centre square. We've seen so many midfielders drafted in the second and third round not be able to make it as a midfielder. And then you kind of wonder where they can play. And for me, Swade, if he can make it as a half forward, he's going to be a really good pick in the late 20s. But if he doesn't, then it's going to be tough for him to crack an AFL side wherever he ends up. And there's been no guarantee from Essendon because if he's bid on at 19 and they have a pick, a guy on the board who's in the top 10, they just won't be taking him.
So if Roby's off the board for 5 and 6, where do you see the Bombers looking really quickly?
I think the options for them, Xavier Taylor really appeals for them as a stout defensive 190 centimetre guy who can play on the talls and smalls. I think he's got a little bit of Josh Weddle about him in terms of his rise from a lockdown kind of type into discovering that he's got this these athletic attributes that help him become a really good player forward of the ball as well. So I want to see him on a wing. I want to see him at half forward. I want to see him run through the midfield as well at the next level and just figure out what he can do because he's a great aerialist, he's great at ground level. And I think if he, as one of the most competitive players in the draft, can make good on his ceiling, that Josh Weddle kind of stratosphere kind of rise is well within his reach. Sam Cumming has a lot of suitors in the top 10, and he's got a guy that we haven't spoken about as much as others who have led the headlines throughout the year, but he did it under 18s level, he did it at the national championships for the undefeated South Australia, and then he stepped up to sample level and was best on ground for his club as well. Shoulder injury kind of ended his season prematurely, but He's got a lot of suitors. I think Essendon and Melbourne are at the top of that list, inside the top 10 right now. And Dyson Sharp is a really hard one to gauge where he's going to land. West Coast has got interest, but at 1 and 2, maybe it's a little bit early. For me, it's not for what they need. But
medalist.
I think he could land at Essendon. He could land at Melbourne. He could even land a little bit later on. And Adelaide would be praying to the gods that he makes it all the way down to 16.
Wow. Okay, there you go. So Dons fans, keep an eye on those guys. Fremantle, geez, they had such a Fremantle season, wasn't it, in the end? I mean,
God, you don't
a lot of
say much-
expectation. What?
Yeah, very down on Freo.
I love Freo. I want Freo to succeed. I think a strong Fremantle is good for the competition. They had a very Fremantle season, up and down, made finals, and then got bundled out by the Suns on the last kick of the game.
That's quintessential, isn't it?
It's just, if you look up Freo in the dictionary, I feel like that's kind of what you're going to see. But they've got picks 20, 47 and 69. So just the three. I mean, last year they had probably the steal of the draft, Murphy Reid at 17. Are they going to be able to do it again?
I think you're a little bit down, a little bit harsh on Freo. 16 and 7, 6th place finish. And yeah, look, the story was Gold Coast
So they're
winning.
close. So what do they need?
I think they're really close. I think
their
their list looks really good. I really like Freo's list. I think they're defensively pretty sound. They've got a young, talented midfield and a really emerging forward line. I think probably the area that they need to look at would be defensively, just because of some of the injuries that they've had. I think that's probably an area
Judd McVie helps their smalls
to look at. But again, pick 20, you're going to be able to do that there. And what's you said earlier on when we started talking about the Crows, a lot of promising SA talent. What's the WA talent like?
Yeah, I'm concerned about the WA talent this year. I think maybe 4 or 5 of them will be taken in the national draft, so I don't think they're going to be looking inside Western Australia. If they do, Fred Rodriguez looms as the guy for them in that range. I really like Fred. I think as a midfielder, he captained WA, and he was their MVP as well. So he had a good championships, all things considered, but he's continued to slide down the board. He was in my top 10 to start the year, still in my 20s right now. It's a little bit higher than consensus on where he might land.
So it'd be a reach at 20, or I guess by the time all the bids come in, it probably is about
so
that.
That will probably end up being about 25.
Okay.
So would he be the player that they need?
I think that, if you want midfield depth, I've got interest there, but I would rather see them move Murphy Reid into a on-ball position in due time, or Cooper Simpson move from half-back on ball and do it that way, and try and complement your defenders by adding a depth piece, because I don't think they've hit on a key defender in the last few drafts. They've relied heavily on Alex Pearce being fit, Brendan Cox being fit, Luke Ryan.
Oscar McDonald had to come in and plug holes at different times.
Yeah, Josh Draper played too early. So I think they've had some issues with their key defensive stocks. I don't think their key forward stocks are perfect either, because they've been a picture of health with Josh Tracy, Jaya Miss and Pat Voss coming in this year. But they've got...
But they're all developing. I think
they don't have a lot behind them, but yes, absolutely, they're still young. So I think a key defender, Blake Threadgold is who I have them linked to. I know they're meeting this week, Fremantle, to go through what looks like, probably being picked 25 and what would be available at that mark. But I think Blake Threadgold is another South Australian who's steadily risen throughout the year, has the opportunity to be a very, very good lockdown defender at 194 centimetres, plays a little bit above that size, strong hips, able to really take on those bigger players. So I like him as a developmental piece.
You've also got a name here that has also sort of slid down the list, kind of like Fred Rodriguez. So Noah Hibbins-Hargraves was probably ranked a bit higher earlier in the year, but might have slid down the list a bit.
And I absolutely love him. I've still got him in my top 15. That's where he'll land tomorrow when my final rankings come out.
Spoiler.
He is mercurial. He's a game winner. He's the most clutch player to come through the pathways in years. He kicks fourth quarter goals.
Call.
Oh, mate. The amount of fourth quarter goals over the last 2 seasons that he's kicked for his side, for both the Dandenong Stingrays and for Vic Country, has been quite immense. And if you want to go and look at anyone's highlights, go and watch the highlights of Noah Hibbins-Hargraves when he kicked 2 goals in the last 10 minutes against WA to put his side in front in the first National Championships game. It was about as impressive as a performance forward half of the ball that you can get.
Have you got a current player comp?
He's a bit more Murphy Reid-like in terms of he doesn't have those athletic standout traits, but his IQ, his one-touch ability, his precision in front of goals is really impressive. I don't think he's ever going to make it as a midfielder, but as a half-forward, I think that you could do a lot worse than taking a punt on that guy with the upside of what he could do. And if you want to go back in time, it's exactly how Steve Johnson was talked about in his draft year.
Interesting.
It's pretty good company.
Speaking of Steve Johnson, the Cats, so the second oldest list, not normally known for their draft Knight, I guess, bona fides. Where do you see the Cats needing to improve to get back onto the premiership hunt?
Well, I think first and foremost, let's just acknowledge, or let me acknowledge, that the Cats had a great season. And
He just feels the need, doesn't he?
Hey, I'm fair. I said all throughout the year and the previous year as well, I thought that their midfield depth was probably the area. Obviously, they addressed it somewhat with Bailey Smith coming in. Yep. I actually think, second shout out to James Worpel, I think James Worpel is a really shrewd pickup for the Cats. I think he's going to really help them. Just doesn't need to be the lead guy, but he'll be a really nice depth piece. And if he can stay healthy, I think he really helps them. But I still reckon they're a player short there. And I think that's probably an area that I would target, especially someone who probably has the ability to roll forward. Patrick Dangerfield light, like that kind of player, like someone who can go midfield and then push forward. I think that's probably the player I'd be looking at. And pick 19, so they do have a pick inside the first round towards the back end. I don't know. What do you think the Cats? Because some people might think now that their midfield mix is sorted.
Well, I love the Worpel pickup as well because they've needed a bigger body in there to allow Holmes and Baz to do less of that grunt work and get on the outside and run. So I think he's going to play a lot of football next year for them and he's going to be good doing it as well. I have them taking Javon Phillippo, which is the exact type of player, that forward half dynamic midfielder who can impact the scoreboard, runs all day. He really suits them as that athletic type that they can develop the traits that need to be developed in terms of his kicking, in terms of his polish. I think using the ball is going to be important for them to develop, but the Cats are the best place for him to do that.
And you were saying he reckons he should be on pick 1.
Absolutely, that's what he says. Yep.
So it'd be a steal at pick 19.
A few later picks too. So the Cats also have 40, 60, 78. Is there anything you can sort of see them doing, working their Cats magic with that?
A couple key forwards I want to put on the radar for them. I don't know exactly where they're going to land on draft night, but firstly, Archie Ludowick, I think, is probably a second-round prospect at this stage. He's fallen down the board a little bit due to a PCL injury, but high-flying left footer in that kind of Eric Hipwood mould that I think they could develop into something. I really like Liam Heatherton as well, who didn't play all year due to a back injury. Those are the types of players that I think they can take a punt on, given they're competitive. Yep. They've got 28 players that they'd be happy throwing out any given week. So I reckon that those types of players would be something they'd be looking at. And I just want to put another one on the radar. Lewis Emmett could be the steal of the draft in terms of what he offers as upside as a 198 centimetre ruckman forward who I think would play best behind the ball, freakishly athletic in the air, able to clunk marks. He jumps over opponents. He's physical as well. He loves to take the ball and run. Think Sam Draper in terms of what he's able to do in the ruck by shoving off his opponent, grabbing it and running, but he's also got some skill to go with it. I think he's got a little bit of touch and depth about what he can do. I would love to see him get an opportunity in a good place to develop his skills.
Has he been linked to the Cats?
No, I would just love to see it.
Yeah, okay.
The two before that, Javon Phillippo, Archie Ludowick, have been closely linked.
Yep.
The other one is Josh Lindsay, the local product out of the Falcons. Now, he's an interesting one in terms of if he makes it a pick 19, I think clubs would be very happy that he's going to Geelong because that's the place where he can really be unleashed as a halfback with the best kick in the draft. His left foot is laser.
It's up to some club to take him before that.
Absolutely. And, maybe it doesn't happen and the Cats get an incredible player to develop.
The Suns, they're just going to keep on rolling. A couple of academy picks, so they've built up an army of picks to kind of match those points there. They've got 15, 18, 24, 28, 29, 36 and 52, but they're not going to be used in those spots, Jasper.
No, they're going to be used very, very early, and as early as maybe West Coast at pick 2. We could see, and I expect these two guys to not get past Richmond at picks 3 and 4. So, firstly, let's talk about Zeke Ewland, who came into the season as probably 1 or 2 on a lot of people's draft boards. Didn't play the first half of the year through back injury. Came back through the VFL program later on, and he's remained a top 3 prospect. He's got the ability to run and carry like Errol Goulden. He's got a left foot. You want to see him through the midfield at some stage, but he could just be a wingman or a halfback where he's just an elite kick, elite user. You want to get the ball in his hands 30 times a game kind of player. He can run both ways. He plays a little bit above his size at 180 centimetres with a top 3 leap in the national combine as well.
Really?
Yeah. So I think that he looms as a top 3 pick this year despite being linked to the Suns, which is a good thing. They should be taking him where he is on draft boards, and I think he's the talent that
make them pay.
It's that Errol Goulden comparison as well.
It's a sexy comparison, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Everyone loves Errol. I would would love to see Zeke become an on-baller, but even if he doesn't, he's a wingman like Errol is.
Yep.
I think that's still a fantastic pick at
So
top 3.
who's the second Suns Academy League player?
So this is one of the more exciting players to come through the pathways in recent years, and Dylan Patterson, who is just a lightning bolt out of halfback. He takes the game on with reckless abandon. He's able to zig and zag through opponents. He uses the ball well off both feet. So I think what you've seen through the pathways, he would have played rugby league if he didn't get that opportunity with the Gold Coast Suns. And he's now got developed traits as well. He's not just this raw athletic type that you take in the second round.
Yep.
He is this top 5 pick because you've seen that he can actually use the ball really well. He's got smart leading patterns. He's able to defend first and impact with the ball second. So that type of player, as a half-back, you don't see him go in the top 5 very often. Lockie Ash, off the top of my head, would probably be one of the last ones to be taken as a genuine half-back you don't see graduating on ball. Dylan Patterson, I think, would be a better player than Lockie Ash, yeah.
Is it just those two that those picks are likely to have to be matched for, or are they going to be able to use one of those later picks on someone else?
Yeah, so those are the first 2. I don't expect them to take all of their academy prospects who could be taking the national draft, but let's go through them quickly. Bo Adensol, I have in the 20s. Balanced midfielder, able to win a hell of a lot of the ball. I actually like him a little bit to Braden Fiorini, who just left the club, but his ability, I think, to be more of that wingman, half-forward type and impact, I think he'll play a lot of senior football. Do they match the bid on him if it comes a little bit too early, though? I'm not too sure. Jai Murray, genuine wingman, hard-running, up and down. Didn't play a lot of football this year due to injury, but clubs love his speed-endurance blend. And then Kobe Coulson as well as a more inside, hardened midfielder, I think. In that Will Graham type that they took, and he didn't play a lot of football this year, but obviously started in the midfield mix this year. I think Colby Colson's got a lot of similar comparisons to what Will Graham did.
So for all the qualms about these Northern Academies, other clubs may be able to poach a couple from the Gold Coast Suns.
Absolutely, I think so, and that's probably the price of the draft bids being increased this year. Obviously, they're going to be increased a lot next year as well, but it might mean that they miss out on one of these guys.
Just quickly on Gold Coast, so at least two very, very exciting players about to walk through the door. Obviously, that comes after Christian Petrarca just has. And we look at what they've done.
What about Jamara Ugo-Hagan? What if they get him right?
You have to look at this club now as well and truly in the premiership window.
They've put themselves in a fantastic position. Credit to Dimmer, credit to their recruiting staff.
Is it 80% of the original list that he had?
Don't know about that, but they are...
Maybe there's some Academy boys were hiding away in the corner.
Could be Q Clash Grand Final coming up.
There you go. GWS Giants, they've got 2 picks in this year's draft. So only the 2, 12 and 35. Where do you see the Giants needing to attack this?
Haven't won a final in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think the deficiency that we spoke about a lot with Christian on the podcast throughout the year was the midfield. It was just they kept getting beaten in the midfield. It was Tom Green, Finn Callahan, and then not that much else. I think the addition of Clayton Oliver is... Look, I don't want to speculate on what Clayton Oliver's going to be. Is his best footy behind him? Maybe, but we still know he's a good enough contributor, even if he's only at sort of 75% of what he was in the past. But I still think they need more there. I still think they need somebody else to come in and sort of bolster that midfield as well. The other thing is, do they look at someone to partner Aaron Cadman long term? A bit like what we said with the Crows, where they're looking for a Tex Walker replacement. Do they go down the let's start looking and get ahead of the game on Jesse Hogan's replacement? He's going to be 31 starting next year. How much more good footy does he have left in? Look, I'm not writing Hogan off. No. He's only a year removed from winning a Coleman medal, but I think that's probably another area they could look at as well.
They got to look at life after Hogan this year when he was injured, and it didn't look great.
Didn't look great.
You know, Cadman's on the precipice of really breaking out. I think the inconsistency would be frustrating, but he's still so young.
His goal tally was really good this year, but I still think it was roller coaster, and it was a bit... I think if you asked the average footy fan how many goals did Aaron Cadman kick this year, I don't think they would have realised he kicked as many as he did, which probably says the way he looks on the field probably not quite at the level that you would hope to see it from.
But it's so exciting, and you want to find a partner for him long term. I don't think they have that on their list. They've tried Max Krzyzewski. You know, obviously Hogan right now is that perfect foil, but
You want to be at the point where by the time Hogan's done, you've got someone that is there, ready.
So with 12 and 35, is there someone you can look at or want to look at for that midfield depth or that key forward role?
I think this is the perfect spot for Aiden Schubert, who we've spoken about with Adelaide. Key forward in that kind of Riley Thilthorpe mould as a genuine presenting full forward who can go through the ruck as well and chop out. I think having the extra player on the bench does help him just be more of that chop out for 20% of the game. I would love to see them have a look at Ollie Greaves as well as an inside midfielder. He's a bull at the stoppage. He wins a lot of ball. I think Tom Green, Clayton Oliver and him wouldn't mix as that kind of in terms of the foot speed and the like. But if he can develop behind those guys and eventually take the Clayton Oliver spot or mix in it with a bit of half forward time where he's kicked goals, that kind of stuff really excites me for what GWS can do to make their midfield a little bit more dynamic without Josh Kelly, Stephen Coniglio in there next year.
Fair enough. Moving on to the Hawks, obviously building. They're coming pretty hard, the Hawks, and they've got picks 10, 22, 62 and 76 to look at this year, Jake. Where would you like to see them go?
Well, they clearly knew what they needed, and it was, Zach Merritt, but a lot of clubs love Zach Merritt. They are a midfield. It seems to be
Well, they were a midfield short when Will Day was in the team, and then he went out, and now they've also lost...
two midfielders short, and then now you've lost Warple, so they might be three midfielders short. I think they tick so many boxes, the Hawks. They are right on the cusp of being a legitimate contender. If they're not already,
I completely agree.
They're right there. And I think if the Zach Merritt deal's done, we might be looking at Hawthorn as the flag favourite for next year.
Yeah.
So I think it is a midfielder that they need. You've probably already said a couple of these names. Pick 10. What's sort of best case if they are to look to add to their midfield stocks around that pick 10?
Firstly, what do you think about the possibility of them trading these picks with a view to Sam Walsh next year, Zach Butters next year? Do they need the draft capital to make those moves happen?
Are you sort of saying 2026 is a bit of a consolidation year? Are fans going to want to buy into that? I mean, you're also not guaranteed Butters. You're also not guaranteed Walsh.
That's exactly it.
You're not guaranteed Zach Merritt.
But you got to have the picks to be in contention. Otherwise, you're guaranteed to not get him.
Don't have the clout.
Got to have enough picks.
Look, it's. I guess it's a balancing act. I mean, this is.
But would you do that if you could get a future first from a team like a North Melbourne, for example? Would you trade those two picks, 10 and 22, to do that?
You'd have to consider it because you got to look at it this way: the player, and you'll be able to answer. Like the player that the Hawks might get with pick 10, if they are going down the midfield path, which I think their fans would want them to do. Is that player going to be enough to make them a true contender?
In the next 2-3 years.
That player is not going to be Zach Merritt next year.
Yeah.
No chance. So are they better off kicking the can down the road for a year in the hope of
having a lack of midfield depth for 2026?
For this year to be able to bring in an A+ A grader? It's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. I mean, I don't even know if the Hawks know. You can go both ways, obviously. I'm not sure what they do.
Well, the midfielders in that mix, I think Sam Grill would be the ideal candidate. He's got the best speed, endurance blend in this draft. He's probably the best athlete overall in this draft. He takes the game on. He's got blistering speed to both burst away from congestion, but also his direct opponent on offense. The defensive side of his game needs work. His kicking isn't perfect. So it's a work in progress, but that's the type of player that they were in pursuit of, I think. A bit more speed through the middle of the ground, and I think that he would suit them perfectly and give them the opportunity to mix things up a little bit through there.
He had a massive combine too. I think I saw his name pop up in a couple of the keys.
Yeah, sub 6 minute 2 kilometre run into a sub 3 second 20 metre sprint. He is just a really dynamic
Would he
player.
beat you, Jake?
I was just about to ask you the same question. You've thrown me now. I wonder whether the Hawks might throw some very different lineups out there next year in terms of their midfield mix. I wonder if someone like Dylan Moore might play a bit more through the midfield. I wonder if someone like Josh Weddle might get a bit more of a run through the midfield at times.
They're going to have to do something because they lost Warple for nothing in the end.
They were, as we've said, they were too short with Warple and with Day healthy. I mean, once Day went down, no Warple, no Merritt. It's just it does feel like a massive hole at the moment.
I think it really depends on how well they rate the guys that will be around that 10 to 15 mark in the draft. And if it is someone like Grill or if it is Greaves or Lindsay that you've talked about earlier, if they can hitch their wagon to that guy and get some immediate dividends for it, great. But I mean, if you kick the can down the road, you're still not wasting a year. But
you may, as you say, you may not get
even get Butters or Walsh or whoever
it's just
it might be.
okay, well, but then you still have those picks.
Okay,
It's not like the picks disappear.
Your Hawthorn's list manager. Are you taking the risk on waiting and sliding back into next year's draft, or getting those pieces for an attack at the trade desk next year, or are you going for what is currently available on this year's draft board?
It's a great question. I mean, I don't know the answer. I mean, maybe it is that I haven't really thought about it that much. Maybe it is that you look to bolster your draft capital for next year to have it. Clearly, they want to bring in a top line player. They feel like they're one top line midfielder away. Maybe that is and there is no guarantee. But if you ask the Hawks fan, what would you rather them do? Would you rather them not take a midfielder this year that might make you 2% better, or you basically have a similar season in 2026, but you're going to bring Zach Butters in next year, or you have a 50% shot at bringing Zach Butters in? I reckon you're taking that.
Yeah, I think if you want to put your eggs in two baskets, I think you look at the SA crop, because they could be of interest to Port Adelaide next year for Zach Butters. So maybe a Dyson Sharp is on the board when
developing for a year. He's a known quantity and he's part of the package.
Philippou.
Yeah, that's a really
Mitch Marsh is a forward. I think that is a really interesting one for Hawthorn to look at, and it's definitely been mooted amongst rival clubs.
Yep.
Cool. Let's move on to the Ds. They've got a couple of picks in a row as well, so they're right at the pointy end with 7, 8, and then 37, 66, and 71. Had a pretty decent draft last year, so you can sort of see what they're starting to build, which is really handy. What is the list need for the Ds as they sort of enter this period of transition, or continue through this period?
It's been a quiet rebuild for the Ds over the last few years. They've traded picks into the current year and tried to stock up with those types of players. So I think quietly they'd be all right with their position. They just need to stop relying on those older players so much.
I've got 3 words written down here. Best player available, and it sounds silly to say, like, well, obviously you want to take the best players that you can get.
But you lose your 2 best available players in the off-season.
Well, yeah, but I think there might be a tendency with other clubs, like we just said, Hawthorn. You might have a great key forward, but it's like, well, we need a midfielder. We don't need the key back or whatever. I think with Melbourne, I think there are so many holes that need fixing. They're clearly in a rebuild. I mean, they've just lost arguably their 2 best players. Max Gawn is 34 years old. I mean, how much longer has he got left? They're obviously in a full-blown rebuild. So is it a case of just taking who are the best players and we figure it out later?
I think that's what they did last year.
Yeah.
They were like, we love Harvey Langford when he got to their pick. We love Xavier Lindsay when we got to their pick. 2 midfielders while they still had Petrarca and Oliver on the books. It wasn't necessarily the need then, but it definitely
It clearly is now, yeah.
And it's definitely best available talent for them.
So around 7 to 8, after a couple of bids matching, we're looking at sort of like 10 to 12. Yeah. Where do you see, or who's available at those picks?
They absolutely love Sam Cumming. I'm not sure he'll be available at that pick.
The South Australian fella?
So let's talk a little bit more in detail about what he's able to do, because he might be the most balanced midfielder in this draft in terms of he's got a great aerial ability at about 6'1". His contested ball winning is really impressive. He's racked up numbers at under 18s level, and the national championships he went forward. And as a half forward kind of conduit, he was able to pick out targets, use the ball really well. He was top 5 for the Carnival in score assists in the end. And then he stepped up to Sandford level and he won his own ball. He was able to take contested marks ahead of the ball. He kicked goals from outside 50. There's a lot of what he can do as a competitive kind of player through either the half forward line or the midfield. His ability to run both ways.
Yep.
It's the perfect modern day complementary piece to your star players, I think, and that's what they're looking at Harvey Langford becoming in the future. So they would love to pair him with some guys who work on his deficiencies as well. So I think they really like Sam Cumming. I think that Lockie Doverston's range starts here as a small forward. He's probably the best small forward in the pool. He definitely is for mine. And he's able to play half forward, deep forward, allows Cozzy Pickett to go more into the midfield. And that's probably the biggest area of weakness for them on their list at least.
He also club tied as a father-son, Kalani White, son of Jeff.
Yeah, so
is he going to make it?
He was in the Suns Academy and he chose the Ds as a father-son, which is a huge coup for the Ds, I think.
Big.
Probably doesn't get a bid in the draft, but they were taken with their last pick. So I think that he'll be on the national list.
Has he shown enough to sort of, I guess, I mean, not hitch the wagon to a Max Gawn replacement, but is there enough to sort of show that he might become a consistent AFL player?
No, I would say he's a huge project player still, but the traits are really developable. He's got fantastic athleticism. He plays a little bit like, he's got that real conventional ruck style at leaping at the opponent that will help with the new rules. And as we've seen with Jeff, like that type of play has been a huge positive for clubs in the past. Let's see if it becomes that in the future as well.
Looking at North Melbourne, normally featuring at the top end of the draft, they've slid back, kind of as you said, and there will be some moves. I think you're sort of mooting a few moves to sort of move those picks around. But they start at 25, 26, then 46 and 57. Where would you be hoping that North is looking for their list before we look at moving those picks?
Yeah, I like the idea of looking for a bit more forward line punch. That's probably an area I'd look at. Otherwise, someone off half back, maybe a line breaker type that can just a bit of point of difference. I think the midfield looks pretty well set now.
You just can't be drafting more inside midfield.
Yeah, sure. I think especially with the players that have sort of been on the fringe, I think there's the hope and desire that they will also go in. How do you fit them all in? So I think bit of line breaker or a line breaker type, maybe off halfback, or someone that can sort of bolster the forward line a touch.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they've just needed a small forward so desperately. Lockie Dobberston won't be available there. Do they consider a bid on Hussein El Ashkar, who is the Essendon-tied small forward, who's probably second or third in terms of where I rate him as a small forward in this pool? I think Taylor Burns' range starts here early in the second round as quite a nuggety, strong-bodied small in the forward half, but he's able to win his own ball and kicks a lot of goals through his kind of power through the stoppage.
Yep.
The ones that I want to look at really closely here are Lewis Emmett, who I alluded to for Geelong, as well as that project who could play at either end. I think North Melbourne still needs another guy that they can hitch their wagon to as a key defender or forward of the future. I don't think you can be relying on what they have on their list right now. They took Matt Whitlock, and they're playing him as a forward now through the preseason. So they're going to say that you're going to be the foil to Nick Larkey going forward.
Yep.
Archie Ludowick's the other one we've spoken about as that left footer who's probably slid down the board a little bit and could end up in the second round frame, but they're in a tough spot now where they could have taken a really, really good top 5 pick this year, but they traded it last year to Richmond. And you look back on that trade 12 months on, they ended up trading their future first for Richmond's future second round pick and pick 27 at the time, which ended up being Matt Whitlock, who's a player that's going to take a few years of development still. It's a tough one to look back on now.
Yep.
Yeah, that is a bit tough. But look, we'll see what they do. They obviously think they've got, as you say, enough midfield pieces now. It's about sort of building around it. North, very interesting to see what they do. Port Adelaide, on the other hand, they've only got the one pick in this year's draft. So pick 49. Is there something in mind that they have for this, or? What's the logic behind just the one selection?
Yeah, so they've traded out. I think a lot of that was the Jack Lukosius deal last year, which probably hasn't worked to their hoping so far. But they went pretty hard last year with Joe Berry, Jack Whitlock, and Christian Moraes as well. So they've got a group of players that they're pretty confident in, and they're under the Josh Carr era now. I think they're going to try and move a bit towards the youth. I'd suggest they're in a bit of no man's land right now.
Do you think there's like a bit of a high risk, high reward type player that could be on the board around pick 50-ish whenever it sort of falls to them that they could be looking at? Or is there a possibility they don't pick at all?
Well, there is a chance that they don't take and they just do 3 rookie elevations. I still think they'll take 1, maybe 2, but at pick 49, which will come into about 38 to 40-ish after all the bids are matched. I think Liam Heatherton looms as a prospect who will be taken in the national draft. A conventional lead-up full forward, strong body, didn't play any football this year, so was slidden down out of the top 30 to start the year. And I think that he would loom as an ideal kind of long-term option as a key forward. They'd love to add some foot skills off halfback though. The opportunity to get up the board and grab an Oscar Taylor, for example, who has risen into the top 20 to 25 kind of calculations would be huge, weighing on the mind of Port Adelaide. And you also got to consider in the future they've got Dougie Cochran coming through. So if they get him tied as an NGA prospect, which hasn't been confirmed or denied yet, AFL's still working through that. He's a top 2 prospect next year along with Cody Walker, and if he's club tied to Port Adelaide, they're going to need more points next year to go and get him.
Interesting to see what the Power does. Richmond obviously had such a strong draft hand last year. Went with Sam Lawler, Josh Smiley, Taj Houghton, Jonty Fall, Luke Traynor, Harry Armstrong. All I know.
Keep going. Thomas Sims, Jasper Alga.
They've got another strong draft hand this year. So obviously that North Melbourne pick you said from last year. So picks 3 and 4 and then 38. Do you see the method behind the Tigers' madness? Where do you see them looking with these early picks?
So they went and took a bunch of prospects who were going to take time to develop next year. Not just the tools that they took in the Armstrongs and the Falls, but they also knew that Josh Smiley would take a little bit of time as a midfielder, and his pre-season hasn't started the way he'd want this year either. They're looking towards the future and they're trying to build the highest talent possible to all make a charge at the same time.
Exactly. And I think this is, I think this is, we don't know how it's going to unfold, so stick this in the time capsule and we'll check on it in 5 years. But this seems to be the way, at least from a fan's point of view, that you would want your club to approach a rebuild. Get all the talent in quickly, do it in one go, and let them build together. I think it's just... Are you going to have misses? Are there going to be misses from last year? Of course, everyone has misses. But if you have that many picks and you bring all this talent in together, I think it's a huge win for the Tigers. We all knew that the cliff was coming, and they shipped off the players that they could to get the value back, and they're just completely rebuilding. And would you be surprised if in 4 or 5 years' time that all of a sudden you're looking at some of these players that they've been able to pick up together they're 22, 23, 24 years old.
Played together with 5,
they've already played. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a massive tick for what they're doing.
So I guess they've got the first 2 picks after West Coast. So if West Coast are bidding on players, then you think Richmond will probably be expected to bid on some of these academy players like Zeke Euland or whoever it might be, from the Gold Coast Academy. They're obviously probably not going to get them. So where would they be looking beyond those guys, sort of in that sort of 4 to 8 range?
Yeah, so take the club type talent out of it. There's a bit of wait and see on what West Coast does at picks 1 and 2. If Cooper Duff-Tytler is available, which we'll get to with West Coast, I expect them to still take that tall because, as you say, it doesn't matter if you've got 8 tools that you've taken in the top 10. If you're not looking at competing in the next 5 years, let's go and see which ones work out because I guarantee you a few of them will.
Yep.
And I'd bet Cooper Duff-Tytler works out for them as maybe an undersized ruckman in the future. He's got a bit of Luke Jackson about him in the way that he can use the ball at ground level at that extra midfielder type, but he's so different as a genuine ruck prospect to Luke Jackson. I expect him to land at West Coast, but if he doesn't, Richmond should be taking him. The other guys, if we take Cooper Duff-Tytler out of it with those 2 picks, I think Xavier Taylor will be one of their selections. We've spoken about him with Essendon in terms of the 190cm defender in that Nathan Broad, Nick Vlaston kind of mould as a lockdown who can do some stuff offensively as well. I would love to see him become that Josh Weddle type around the ground, Mr. Fix-It, wherever you need him to win a game, he can do it. I absolutely love the upside of what he presents, and Richmond, I think, that's a type of player that they don't quite have through the new crop coming through in that next generation. The other one is Sullivan Roby, who absolutely needs to be a consideration here. And he's a bigger body. He's not as quick as maybe the Richmond list probably needs right now.
Okay.
But what he presents next to
Sam
Lawler, Josh Smiley, I mean, that power, speed, explosiveness, strength through the contest, I think, is the way modern football's going. And he is absolutely the prospect that they should be looking at these selections. What I have gathered from clubs speaking about the Tigers is that Sam Grill is really close to being one of those selections.
So he was part of their VFL team at different parts.
So he played a couple of VFL games for them off halfback. He was taking kick-ins for them. They gave him the ball and they said, do what you can. Let's see what you can do. And he really impressed. He's got incredible speed off the mark. He's got the endurance to back it up. He wants to become a midfielder at some stage. He might start off halfback, but that speed and execution off halfback, I think, is exactly what they need for the now. And in the future, if he can be the foil to those bigger bodies through the midfield, I think that's a huge win.
Any club-tied names?
Yeah, so we've got Louis Kellaway out of South Australia, who's important in the National Carnival for SA as a midfielder. It's interesting to see what Richmond does because they're only going to take 3 players. So they've got pick 38 later on after those top 5 picks. If they have someone better on the board, then they're not going to take Louis Kellaway.
Okay. So would that be a reach at 38?
They haven't made any guarantees to him. I think that's not really a reach. It's probably going to come into about 32. It's not a huge reach at all in terms of the depth of this draft. I think he's still a national draft prospect.
Okay.
It's interesting to see if they'll do it or not. I'm not too sure, and I wouldn't call it now.
Fair enough. The Saints, again, another team that kind of had a bit of a banner year with the draft crop last year. Took a couple of big names, so Toby Travalia, Alex Tauru as well. Got some use out of Hugh Boxall throughout the year as well. But they have
already made their moves.
Well, I was going to say they have, because the cupboard's a little bit bare. It's draft picks 50 and 65 for the Sainers. Anything sort of jump out to you as what you might be wanting to see with a later pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an academy prospect that they might be...
Yeah, I think they should be really excited about this one. Kai Fincher.
Oh.
Second round prospect, but a half-back who's got a little bit of speed, power, played on ball for their VFL affiliate in the Zebras, and he really impressed. He was best on ground for them in his VFL debut game, which obviously bodes really well to what he can do at the next level as a senior player.
If he was to get bid on early, does St Kilda have enough to be able to...
They'd be in trouble if it was in the 20s. I don't expect it to happen, and they're obviously comfortable with their draft hand, thinking that it won't happen. But he's in that 30s range for me, and if he gets a bid on at 30, then they don't have enough points to match. They could go into a draft deficit next year, which is obviously an issue. So they would probably be looking at trading in some points to match that bid, because I think he's actually exactly what they need.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Moving further down sorry, go on.
Yeah, sorry, a couple later options for them. I know that running power has been a big thing for Ross over the last decade. A couple guys that I think have that kind of running ability, a bit more rangy in the second guy, but Jack Dalton is a local kid who we interviewed through the year for ESPN. He had this horrible injury where he broke both of his wrists to start the year. He was told that he'd be out for 12 months, and he came back and was putting together best on ground performances for Sandy Dragons. They made the grand final off the back of him, and he was best on ground in their grand final performance as well. Unfortunately, they lost to the Eastern Rangers, but I think that he figures in that later kind of 40 to 60 kind of range of the draft, or late in the draft at least. And then Matt Leray is another SA boy. Wingman, can play down half-back at 190 centimetres, intercepts, kickstarts, transition. I think that's the type of player, with Mason Wood playing more forward of the ball now, that Ross Lyon could be looking at.
Well, see what the Saints do with those couple of picks. The Swans made their big moves in the trade period, really, Jake. Obviously getting Charlie Curnow through the door, leaving them with picks 31, 32, 42 and 63. Jasper, I'll get your thoughts in a second, because they do have a club-tied potential first rounder, but where would you like to see the Swans attack?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I would like to hear about their academy selection, that academy prospect that they will be able to get, and same sort of thing. I know we've sort of said it a bit on this show, but it does frustrate me when clubs don't... They're scared to bid on players. I don't understand it. Where would he be going if not linked to the Swans?
So this is Max King, who's not the St Kilda one. He's a Sydney Swans academy player. He's kind of that third tall type up forward, but just an incredible athletic kind of background. His jump in the air, I think, would be the best in the draft pool. He's got some speed off the mark as well, so a really high twitch kind of athlete that I think could explode at the next level of professional environment. That kind of stuff, I think, really bodes well for what he could do at the next level. There's also a chance that he doesn't work out, because he hasn't been able to really get involved. His consistency this year has been up and down. He started as a potential top 5 pick, probably more in that 15 to 20 range, and I'd be happy bidding on him in that 15 to 20 range. The likelihood is he probably goes outside of that top 20, and that might help them, because they've got a couple other guys who are early second round prospects, maybe even first round prospects, who could end up at another club, because they wouldn't be able to match it.
They don't have enough,
They wouldn't be able to match 2 first-round bids on Max King and Harry Kyle, who's quite a powerful utility type. Lockie Carmichael was the Allies MVP this year, a bit more of a halfback conduit who was able to distribute and be that quarterback type of player. So those 3 guys, I don't think they're going to get all 3 if the bids come where they should. And Sydney will be okay with that, knowing that they've got through the door Charlie Curnow and they've addressed that list need, and they can go and contend without them.
Is King likely to be a round 1 contributor?
No, I think he's going to take some time in the VFL. He played a little bit of VFL football this year, and he's struggled a little bit with the bigger bodies. If he gets a run at the football, he looks amazing, but when you take that away, I think he's struggling to contribute. That's why clubs have him a bit lower down the order now, but the upside of what he can do at the next level is awesome.
So if you had to pick one of, say, Harry Kyle, Lockie Carmichael or Noah Chamberlain, these other club-tied prospects, which one would you probably be looking at after Max King?
I'd lock in Lockie Carmichael, especially losing Ollie Florent. I think that's a direct replacement to be that kind of wingman halfback. Jake Lloyd coming towards the end of his career as well. Carmichael looms as a genuine best 22 player pretty early on in his career.
West Coast Eagles, huge week for them.
Massive
week. They've got draft picks 1, 2, 13, and then 34, 41, 53, and 58. They do have a couple of club-tied prospects, but nothing that'll eat up one of those early picks?
No, I think that these guys are going to come later on. The more interesting one is Tyler Williams, who has steadily risen this year. I think he's put together like a really impressive campaign when you look at the summation of it. But he was so far off the draft radar coming into the season as an NGA that it would be a pretty remarkable rise if this kid ended up in the first round. And it is a possibility. I expect it more to be on night 2 that he's the first West Coast player bid on. And they're now in a position where they can take extra rookie list spots. So that kind of draft concession really helped them.
What sort of player is he? Tyler Williams?
Yeah, he's a half forward, really athletic in the air, able to do some special things. Wes Wally, we've spoken about a little bit earlier in the year as well, one of the best names in football. I think he probably lands as a Category B rookie.
Sure.
I don't think he gets a national draft bid. Charlie Banfield, the father-son, was best on ground in the Waffle Colts grand final. He looms as kind of a strong-bodied wingman, a little bit of Blake Acres about him, what he's able to do in the air. Bit more of contest that he can win, and I think that he can become a pretty good best 22 player for West Coast in due time.
Yep.
Kobe Evans as well, he's got some interest in the national draft, so he may get a bid as well.
All right, well, so those are probably sort of further down the list, but they do have these number 1, number 2, and number 13. So there are a few contenders, but you've clearly had a number 1 all throughout the year, and where they'll probably look with that number 1 pick.
Well, firstly, I want to ask, how many top 5, top 8 kind of players do you reckon they have on the list right now? Because they've been bad for 3 or 4 years.
I was looking at this a couple of weeks ago. They have not had as many.
They've got Harley Reid at pick 1.
Yeah, there's not much, because I remember when Harley Reid went, that was the question. It was like, well, how many others? And there's really not that much. Wasn't the previous one like? Go back to like Andrew Gaff.
Gaff retired.
Yeah,
he was pick 3.
Yeah.
Their next highest draft pick on their list is Ruben Jimby at pick 9. Which is just ridiculous.
Staggering.
It's ridiculous
For
to think
how they've been since sort of 2020.
Yeah. They've traded out of drafts so heavily over the last 2 years to bring in the likes of Liam Baker, but it's left them with a dearth of high A-grade talent. And if Ruben Jimby's your highest rated guy after Harley Reid, and he's been really serviceable as that third defender playing above his size, but you just want to bring in more talent.
You should have 7 Ruben Jimbys on your list.
So when you got picks 1 and 2, the best available talent is who's at the top of the list.
Well, you got to take Willem Dersma. He's been my number 1 all year, and I think I would take him at number 1 last year as well. So It's not just that this draft may be a little bit weak in terms of its depth, but at the very top, Willem Dersma.
As in you taking him over every player that was taken last year?
Yeah, at the time, last year, I think I would. And, we've seen awesome campaigns from Sam Lawler, Harvey Langford, Murphy Reid, and the like, but I would have at the time taken Willem Dersma at number 1 after the campaign he just had.
What sort of player is he?
He's going to be drafted
compared to his brothers.
He's going to be drafted with the upside of being a midfielder, which you couldn't say about Zane or Xavier, I don't think. They were locked into being that half forward and that wingman respectively. But what he can do as a loose ball guy, post clearance, that damage while winning his own ball and exploding from contest and be able to hit targets, kick goals. His aerial ability is A grade. He can intercept off halfback, where I expect him to start playing his football. But in due time, that receiver in the midfield in transition, and where the game's going is that high up and down kind of basketball style of game, he is absolutely perfectly suited to it in the air at ground level. He can do it all. I love what he presents as a potential, best player in the competition in due time.
Wow, okay. So that's a slam dunk at number 1.
Absolutely.
Number 2, you've mooted that they may look to bid on players. I mean, if that doesn't eventuate, are there names at the top of that list that you expect?
They should have a look at it. The interesting part for them is what they do with pick 13, if they can get it a little bit higher up the board, because they've got 1, 2. Imagine if they got another top 10 pick in the door.
Sure.
That's where Carlton comes in with picks 9 and 11. If they can work their way out by, I think right now they're posturing to bid for Harry Dean on pick 2. If they can work out a situation where they're getting, for pick 13, 34 and 41, they grab pick 9 or 11. I think that makes their hand a hell of a lot stronger with the top tier talent in this draft pool. And it means that they can swing more on the upside of what Cooper Duff-Tytler presents as a future ruckman, a forward. He's got some midfield chops as well. We've spoken a little bit about him with the Richmond segment, if you want to go back and listen to that as well. But I think that he's being a little bit overlooked in terms of the talent that he presents in this draft. I've got him as the second best open pool talent.
The ruck stocks have been quite grim as well.
Yeah,
so
real
I think that's probably an area that they would want to. And you can't fix everything in one draft, clearly, because there are a lot of deficiencies on the Eagles list. But I think that would be a huge win if you can say, got our ruckman for the next decade, got a legitimate midfield starter partner alongside Harley Reid for the next decade. I mean, that...
And then you have a bit of a punt at, say, anywhere from sort of 11 to 13, as you say, if they can sort of slide in
Exactly
there.
right.
Other names that might be in contention sort of for that mid-range?
So, well, firstly, pick 1 and 2. If it's not Cooper Duff-Tyler, I think Dyson Sharp comes into calculations at that spot as well. And Sullivan Roby, I think the Rise could actually land him at pick 2. You know, clubs would not rule that out right now about West Coast. And they haven't locked in who they're taking yet. They haven't told anyone who they're taking yet, but I expect that to happen before the draft. That'll be confirmed where they're gonna lead. And that'll be my final Phantom draft just ahead of the draft. At 13, there's a lot of what they could do. The best WA prospect right now is Jacob Farrow. If they could land him, I think that'd be a really good result for them because he's a beautiful ball user. There's upside to what he can become at the next level in terms of his midfield craft. He's still got to become a better contested ball winner, but he's got the size and the ball use of that Hayden Young, that Jordan Dawson type, where they started outside the centre square and then eventually graduated in there. He could still just become a really good halfback.
Is he in that teen sort of range?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of interest there from Melbourne at the late 10 stage.
Yep.
But he's more likely to figure early teens, and that's kind of where I think that he could land if West Coast get up the board to grab him.
Fair enough. And finally, the Western Bulldogs. Would you believe it, Jake? There's another Darcy on the way. They've got picks 14, 30, 70 and 74. What picks will be needed to take him?
Yeah, so Will Darcy's a later consideration. If he gets a national draft bid at this point, I think I'd be surprised.
Okay.
So definitely doesn't have the chops of Sam coming into the league at the very least, but he's a little bit smaller. He's a defender. He's going to take time to develop a little bit. Missed a lot of the season through illness and injury, and he had a bad cork at one stage that ruled him out of some finals action. So it's been frustrating for him. I think that he's going to take a lot of time to develop, but that may come as a rookie instead. They haven't confirmed that they'll be taking him, but I do expect him to end up on the Western Bulldogs list as kind of a project player. What they do with pick 14, you know, they're right in the middle of the age range right now. They're
middle of the ladder, 9th.
Exactly right. They haven't quite been able to, and you know, the top 10 really helps them because they finish 7th to 10th every single season. So what I think that they should be doing is taking the best talent available to fit their team right now. So I want to ask you, do you reckon, in my mind, it's either small forward, well, they've lost Cody Waitman all year, obviously, but he should be back, small forward or halfback run?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think I'm looking more the defensive side of the ball. I think the forward line, as you said, Cody Waitman will come back. Cody Waitman's performance and consistency prior to this year was very, very good.
Yeah.
He is a top-line small forward that will come straight back in. I don't have as many issues with the forward line as I do with the back line. I think the back line cost them games this year. I do. I think the key backs, I think the run off halfback, I think there are legitimate concerns there. The midfield's fine, no one's questioning that. That's where I'd be looking.
They had a look at Mark Keane in the trade period, obviously. They couldn't get across any quality key defensive talent, so they're going to run it back with Rory Lobb. They kept Buku Kamas for that depth piece while Carlton really wanted him. So they're in a position where they really need key defensive depth.
Yeah.
But I don't think they can get that at this point of the draft.
It.
They can't slot a player in like a Harry Dean to play alongside Rory Lobb right now and Ryan Gardner. And
Question without notice, do they have something in next year's draft that they might be able to sort of tempt a team with to move up a touch and maybe snag someone in that range?
This is the other team, in addition to Adelaide, that I can foresee a potential move being made to use a future first-round pick to either get up the board with pick 14 or to add another piece in the first-round frame, because there are clubs willing to trade out of this draft, as we said, coming into this podcast. This is very different to 2024 when you couldn't budge any clubs moving out of the first 20 to 25 picks. I think the Western Bulldogs are a candidate to do that. I think Adelaide's also a candidate. And at pick 14, they would love Lockie Doverston to fall, the best small forward in the draft. I think they just snap him up without a second thought if he's available. Josh Lindsay is the best ball user in the draft. I said he could slide to Geelong at pick 19. 14 is probably right in his range, the middle of his range for the Western Bulldogs, and it'd be hard to pass on that quality of ball use.
Stick him in half-back.
Yeah, a bit of Bailey Dale, not quite the run and carry, but just the ball use and able to open up the game is really impressive for what he can do at his size. And then Oscar Taylor as a more of a shut-down, lockdown kind of defender. Obviously lost Dr. A this year, and hopefully they're able to make that up through other ways, because I think there's small defenders have also been lacking a little bit so far, not just the key defensive depth, and Oscar Taylor's that kind of defence first kind of player.
Fascinating stuff. That is all 18 teams. We've gone through them. I know, have a bit of a breath. We've gone a little bit over what we thought we might.
As always.
You've probably covered them all. This has been very comprehensive, but are there some names to keep an eye on, someone who might not have been in or on radars in the last sort of 2, 3, 6 months that you can see maybe popping up on draft night?
Yeah, even in the first round frame, I think Rory Wright from the Sandringham Dragons is a little bit of a chance. He didn't even get a National Combine invite, but what I want to put on the radar for him is his ability. He started as a midfielder this year, and he was impressive. He was probably Sandringham Dragons' best midfielder to start the year, but he went to halfback, and his ability to control the game, his leadership really elevated. He became a quarterback of that team. He's able to distribute off a beautiful left foot, but his marking in the air, intercepting and rebounding, there's high upside in what he could be at the next level, and I think clubs really like his character assessments, which is something that draft watchers don't get to see a lot. But when you speak to clubs, him and Dyson Sharp and Sullivan Roby are guys that really stand out in terms of their character and how impressed.
What is that? What is it? Just asking sort of like questions about family, going and visiting them. Like what is when you're doing a character assessment? What sort of is
the way it's been explained to me is: do you want this guy at your football club? Does he add something to your culture?
Gotcha.
And for me, that's a multitude of things. But family is obviously going to be an important part of it. For me, it's aspiration and what you want to be, and the type of player that you want to be, and the type of person that you want to be. And Rory Wright, he really impressed. So yeah, I think that's definitely one that could land into the first round. We haven't quite spoken about a couple of guys like Sam Swadling out of WA, a genuine midfielder, Cameron Nann, who's got some X factor as a half forward, who moved into the midfield for SA late in the season. And then Tom Burton tested really well out of the Western Jets. There's a bit of a Western Jets tax around these parts for some reason. I feel like those prospects just fall a little bit further down the order than they should sometimes.
Okay.
But he, I think, is a second round prospect who hopefully gets a look in on draft night.
Jasper, awesome stuff. Very comprehensive, as I said. There is heaps of content coming. So power rankings are, depending on when you listen to this, already out. They came out Wednesday. Final Phantom Draft is coming out next week. There's going to be draft night reaction. There's going to be a live blog that Jake's going to be heading off. There's going to be so much analysis and looks at this sort of stuff. Firstly, thank you for all your hard work throughout the years. This is bloody incredible, and we couldn't do this sort of stuff without you. So thank you very much. It's incredibly comprehensive, and we really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and looking forward to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and another successful draft Christmas.
Thank you very much. 1 week to go, and then we're into the Ashes, and it's all happening. How good.
Busy stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. As I said, you can go back and listen club by club. You'll hear all the names, but thank you very much. And Jake, anything off-season? You've normally got your fingers in some off-season.
You got a little pet project, don't you?
I need to get on the phone with Rocco and have a chat about something. I got a little idea, though I don't know if we'll get it up off the ground, but we'll hopefully, because they're always fun to do.
They are fun.
Maybe a bit of.
Did you pay up $200, by the way?
Of course I did.
Well done.
I paid him within 10 seconds of the final siren.
Of the prelim?
Yeah.
What was this bet?
It was a bet who would finish the season high out of Hawthorn and Geelong.
Oh, that's unlikely.
Paying me a little bit. But as I said about 3 hours ago, it feels like, apologies for my Geelong slander throughout the year. Congratulations on finishing runner-up, and good luck next year.
Very good. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll speak to you in the next episode, whenever that is.